Is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Guiding Keys, the story of Kingdom Hearts presented by the Unlockables podcast. As always, I am your host. My name is Eric. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. Wherever, whenever, in time and space you may be located, it means so much to me that you're willing to stop by the show and check out what is going on in the world of video games, or in the case of this mini-series, Guiding Keys, what is going on in the world of Kingdom Hearts. As always, I have been your guide through the wonderful world of Kingdom Hearts and the wonderful mind of series creator and director Tetsuya Nomura. And on this installment of Guiding Keys, we are talking about part 2 of Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, the mobile game story that gives us a little bit more insight into Xehanort's youth and his turn to the darkness, fleshes out his character a little bit more, makes us understand his motivations in the series a little bit better. Last episode on part 1, I gave you some of the introductory information, and we started to dive into the story, which consists of 8 episodes and it also gives us a little bit of a secret ending and a teaser to kind of recontextualize everything we know, as you know, Nomura likes to do. So we don't have too much to cover in terms of introductory stuff before we dive in. We're going to pick up where we left off, which is episode 5. If you have not listened to part 1 yet, I would highly recommend that, because if you're just diving in at episode 5, you're not going to have any idea as to like what is going on in terms of the story. Because something I noticed when like writing the notes and even reviewing the stuff I recorded for the first episode on part 1 is that the story kind of tends to jump around across the Kingdom Hearts timeline. And even though the present we are experiencing is Xehanort's youth during his time in training as a Keyblade wielder, it does kind of jump around throughout different parts of his life to kind of give us a little bit more information into like what he's thinking, or maybe recontextualize certain scenes that we've already seen him in before. So I would highly recommend going to check it out, because that information is foundational to understanding this part, because we're going to be starting with episode 5. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into episode 5 and finish off Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. So episode 5 opens informing us that the scene we are about to see is 54 years later in the future, meaning 54 years from the present time that we are playing through in the game. We see a visibly older Xehanort with a visibly older Master Ericus in the land of departure. And we see a familiar scene once again. We've kind of seen this scene play out in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Ericus is challenging the sanity of Xehanort's quest for the Master Keyblade. Xehanort is recounting the old legends of the Keyblade War to Ericus. Ericus tries to stop his old friend, but this is where Xehanort calls upon the darkness and where he maims Ericus's face, and he gets kind of the gnarly face scars that we see him have when we were first introduced to him in Birth by Sleep. So this fight between the two old friends takes place before the events of Birth by Sleep, just a little bit before the events of Birth by Sleep. We step back in time once again, although in this scene we're only 7 years later from the present time in which our search for the upperclassmen takes place. Remember, that is the crux, the catalyst of the adventure that Xehanort and Ericus are on. We see 2 familiar Keyblades, the Master Defender and the Gazing Eye, also known as No Name. And it seems that a young adult Xehanort and Ericus are having a showdown with each other, in which Xehanort is insisting Kingdom Hearts is the only way. Ericus can't believe that it's come to this only a year after they both were made Keyblade Masters. Xehanort counters by saying they both reached the rank of Master, but Ericus is the true heir, having been given the Master Defender Keyblade. Ericus counters this by saying Xehanort was literally bequeathed a Keyblade from the age of the Lost Masters, inheriting their resolve. Xehanort goes on saying how he's given a lot of thought as to what their role of protector means, as Keyblade wielders and reaffirms his decision to summon Kingdom Hearts. Ericus raises his blade, stating that life has taught them drastically different lessons. Xehanort and Ericus clash, and in a flash, the scene changes. So, in the intro to episode 5, which is titled The Key to Each World's Order, we see two different confrontations between Xehanort and Ericus. We see one when they are older, and one that we see play out in Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, where Xehanort first maims Ericus's face, and for which later Xehanort would apologize by writing a letter, and we read that letter in Birth by Sleep. And we see this other confrontation that happens only a year after they were both named Masters, and we see that Ericus inherits the Master Defender Keyblade, and that Xehanort inherits the no-name Keyblade. And even a year after they were named Masters, they already had a confrontation that is born out of a difference of ideology. And even from this point, Xehanort is already walking down this path, trying to summon Kingdom Hearts. We return to the present day post the events of the Dwarf Woodlands. They worry about Vor, and Ericus is determined to find her after she left with Vidar. Xehanort disagrees, however, saying that they should focus on the task at hand, and he argues that Vidar did say once he was done he would return, and that Vor would return also. Erd stops them from fighting, only for Ericus to enlist the help of Bragi, as the two don their Keyblade armor and leave to search for Vor. Xehanort tells Erd and Hermod that Ericus should follow his heart, and the three friends agree to search somewhere new, as Xehanort thinks that getting close to the magic mirror to ask it a question again might be kind of tricky with the Evil Queen's guard up. We transition to a new scene to see Master Odin on a balcony overlooking the numerous abandoned cities scattered about the expanse of water when Vidar appears to speak with his master. He attempts to tell Odin that he is leaving, but Odin interrupts, stating that true darkness may soon be upon them. Vidar is confused, mentioning how the Heartless are already in the world. And this is where Master Odin tells Vidar of the 13 prime darknesses. And here we get some additional speculation as to the status of these ancient darknesses, from which all their darknesses come from. And he kind of recounts the events of Union Cross and what happened to these. And he kind of recounts the events of Union Cross and what happened to these darknesses. 7 of these darknesses were supposedly trapped in the Lost Masters, who were vessels of pure light, being the Master of Masters, the Foretellers, and Lushu. Of the remaining 6, 4 were trapped by Keyblade wielders in the realm between of another world. We know that to be the Data World. And 2 were said to have been destroyed when the world collapsed after that moment, but there is no proof of that. Odin urges Vidar to exercise caution, to learn to distinguish between the many different shadows and true darkness, even though the 13 have been unseen for many years. We aren't sure what Vidar was going to tell Odin at this point, and there seems to be no sign of Vor with him. But we return back to Xehanort, Hermod, and Erd, who arrive at Beast Castle, the new world that they're going to begin their investigation in. Ericus and Bragi have returned to the mirror in the Dwarf Woodlands, however, to use the mirror once again, although the Queen is still keeping a vigilant eye. So we'll have to see if there are any fruits of their adventure to the Dwarf Woodlands. Back in Beast Castle, the 3 friends rescue Chip the Teacup from the Heartless. Chip takes them back to the other furniture denizens of the castle, Lumiere, Cogsworth, and the others. They tell the 3 friends that 2 travelers recently arrived at the castle, pretending to be weary and in need of shelter, but they weren't who they claimed to be, and stole the beast's magical rose. Erd senses that this may be related to their task, so she basically volunteers, with no questions asked, to help find the rose. The 3 friends go to speak to the master of the house, who is the beast. We find the beast in his destroyed room, staring at the empty table where the rose used to sit. Our 3 friends attempt to approach the beast to help, but his anger swells, and as it does, Heartless begin to appear in the room. They all fight, and for a brief moment, it appears that Beast recognizes their weapons. After taking care of the Heartless, Beast says he has seen those keys before, and asks if their friends stole his rose. Hermod tries to deflect, but Beast isn't having any of it. He lashes out as Hermod blocks his attack, and at Xehanort's urging, they retreat. The three friends, realizing they aren't being pursued, agree to return to the furniture servants of the house and share their somewhat limited findings. But before they can, two Heartless imitating the statues of the castle appear. One runs off into the ballroom, and Erd gives chase as Xehanort and Hermod deal with the second. But no sooner does Erd engage the second Heartless in the ballroom that it goes on to summon like 12 more of its kind. And this leaves Erd outnumbered and outmatched as she steels herself for a tough fight and utters under her breath, "May my heart be my guiding key." Hermod and Xehanort finish off their Heartless, with Xehanort telling Hermod to check on the servants while he goes to help Erd. Erd, meanwhile, is holding her own but is vastly outnumbered, being pushed back until a voice beckons her from the balcony. A girl sporting long gray hair, glasses, and a white dress leaps from the balcony, summoning her Keyblade, and in a flash of light, defeats the horde of Heartless that stand before Erd. This is Vala, another one of the upperclassmen, and she tells Erd that she has been waiting for her, despite Erd's insistence that they were the ones who were actually looking for the upperclassmen. Erd is confused as Vala states she has been watching her to see if she was right and to see if Erd could be useful to their plan. Erd is visibly confused, but Vala states that she is leaving and that she will see Erd once again. But before she goes, she bids Erd return the rose, and suddenly, another upperclassman sporting like a ninja mask silently appears, rose in hand. Vala explains that this rose is essential to this world's order and tells Erd to keep it safe. Vala and the unnamed ninja upperclassmen vanish, and as they do, the camera pans over to show that Xehanort was hiding behind one of the ballroom's marble pillars while this exchange was going on. And he heard basically everything. And I put this notation in my notes later. The ninja's name is Vali. So the two upperclassmen we just met there were Vala and Vali. And they seem to appear to be working towards the same goal that Vidar is, because they went and stole the Beast's Rose, which is another item that is key to this world's order, which just so happens to be the name of the episode. Erd returns the Beast's Rose, much to his relief. The servants insist the three friends stay a while, but they decline, stating that they have a home and matters to attend to elsewhere. We transition to a new scene and are greeted by a text shot that states it is 1 year later. We see Xehanort in his Keyblade armor walking a corridor of darkness. He states that a year after these events, they were to be tested for the Mark of Mastery, and that before the tests, prospective Keyblade wielders journeyed to the outer worlds to broaden their horizons. It was this very thing that set off a series of unfortunate events. He wonders if being abroad again will further expand his horizons, and as he walks, states that even with his armor, he feels the darkness seeping in, embedding itself in his heart. If the armor isn't working, then he should see if his own heart is strong enough to withstand the darkness without it. Xehanort removes his armor, and within moments he is overcome by the darkness, passing out in the dark void of the corridor. Suddenly a robed figure approaches, and as this figure lays eyes on Xehanort, he utters a phrase, "So you're the singularity," and this is where episode 5 draws to a close. We're now on to episode 6, which is titled Uncertain Order. Episode 6 opens with an unconscious teen Xehanort waking up on the ground of a familiar deserted wasteland that we've seen before, the Keyblade Graveyard, with the robed figure that referred to him as the Singularity greeting him with a hearty good morning. This is still 1 year later in our current timeline. Xehanort asks the man who he is, and the man gives a cryptic non-answer, causing Xehanort to sigh in frustration. We know based on this early exchange that this is the Master of Masters, and this must be when he and Xehanort met. The Master claims that he saved Xehanort from the darkness when he spotted him on a leisurely stroll. Xehanort sits beside the man when beckoned, his guard clearly up when the man reveals that he used to be a Keyblade wielder. Xehanort, not buying the man's story and summoning his Keyblade, tells the master that he's never heard of him. And with the flick of his wrist, the master takes Xehanort's Keyblade from him to prove his point before returning it. This does nothing to alleviate Xehanort's suspicions, however. The master goes on to warn Xehanort of going through the dark portals with no protection, even if Xehanort believes his heart is strong enough to stand up to the darkness, and the master hands Xehanort one of the familiar black organization cloaks we're used to seeing, stating that it would provide better protection than his armor. The master asks Xehanort how he ended up in the dark corridor, and as Xehanort begins to explain that he's on his journey to prepare for the Mark of Mastery exam, the master expresses boredom and disinterest, which annoys Xehanort even more, stating that it sounds like a lot of work. The master then asks Xehanort for a favor. After affirming that Xehanort's travels aren't over, he asks Xehanort if he'll go around and look into people's hearts for him. Confused, Xehanort asks the master to explain himself, and here the master goes on a lengthy monologue about the nature of the human heart and the emotions that it feels. Is what you feel towards someone you love always good and well-meaning? Can it be a kind of false light? So are these feelings that emerge from love still light, or are they darkness? This clearly strikes a chord with Xehanort, who has experienced these things in his travels and has pondered such questions himself as we've gone over. The master continues and posits that there are those with power and those without it. Those with power have feelings of superiority and judgment, and those who do not have inferiority and envy. The weak who fear the strong desire to strip them of their power. He then asks Xehanort which one is he? Is he one of the weak or one of the strong? Xehanort tries to counter this logic by saying that people can't be categorized into these two extremes, and even if Xehanort was one or the other, it didn't mean that he carried the same dark intentions. The master asks if that's what Xehanort's trip has really taught him. He claims that his request will help Xehanort broaden his horizons, as Xehanort's trip is supposed to do. In the meantime, the master would remain right there and wait for Xehanort to get back. We transition to the present time, and we're back in Agrabah when we get the episode 6 title shot, which is called Uncertain Order. Jafar is using his ring contraption like he does in the Aladdin movie to look for people who can enter the Cave of Wonder, and it shows the 3 Keyblade wielders who just happened to arrive in the world, Xehanort, Hermod, and Erd, who are in Agrabah looking for Bragi, and Ericus, who left to search for Vor and Vidar. Erd has yet to reveal to them that she met Vala and Vali in Beast Castle, and she's about to when the 3 wielders are approached by Jafar in the street. Jafar lays it on pretty thick by pretending to be on his way to the cave himself, stating it's the only way to save the kingdom, but his true goal is the lamp. None of the 3 wielders trust him, so good for them, but for some reason, Xehanort agrees to go and help him. They head to the Cave of Wonders, and the large lion-headed entrance allows all 3 of them to enter, bidding them to touch nothing but the lamp. Hermod and Erd question why Xehanort agreed to help Jafar so quickly. Xehanort said he agreed in order to have an excuse to explore other parts of the world, but clearly states he does not trust the royal vizier. They proceed deeper into the cave, and ignoring the shenanigans of the magical flying carpet, they spot Ericus in a corridor further ahead and give chase. As they enter another chamber, a booming voice once again warns them to touch nothing but the lamp, as Heartless appear to block their path. After clearing the Heartless, they catch up to Ericus and Bragi in the next chamber, who explain that they too were asked by Jafar to retrieve the lamp as they were searching for Vor and the upperclassmen. Xehanort states that when Jafar asked them to run his errands for him, that Xehanort sensed greed in his heart, that he desires and craves power and will do anything to get it. Ericus and Bragi agree with Xehanort, and they conclude that they shouldn't search for the lamp anymore, but Erd comes to a different conclusion. She thinks they should still look for the lamp, and this is when she explains her interaction with Vala and Vali in Beast's castle. She posits that the upperclassmen could be here in Agrabah looking for the lamp as well, because like Beast's rose, the lamp in this world could be a key to this world's order. Xehanort summarizes this for us, saying that Erd thinks that the lamp is a key to order in this world, and that the upperclassmen are traveling to the different worlds and seeking out these keys to World's Order, and they're trying to steal them for some reason. After exploring the cavern further and defeating some more Heartless, they come to the lamp chamber as Ericus eagerly rushes ahead. And as we get to see more and more of a young Ericus, he reminds me more and more of Sora in his kind of carefree and relaxed demeanor. As they all reach the plateau where the lamp stands, as if on cue, a light gate appears and out steps Vidar, the upperclassman we encountered in Dwarf Woodlands, with Vor in tow. Ericus tries to get Vor to come back home, but she refuses. Ericus then accuses Vidar and his classmates of stealing things that are vital to the Order of the Worlds. Vidar doesn't deny it. In fact, he basically confirms it. He says that taking the items does upset the balance of the worlds, but what they are looking for is something greater than that. They hope to find a true light that shines in the face of chaos and uncertainty. Bragi accuses Vidar of using the worlds as part of their plan, but Vidar doubles down, stating that he is willing to do anything, sacrifice anything, in order to defeat the darkness. He then asks Ericus if he wouldn't do the same thing, knowing Ericus' intense hatred of the darkness and probably hoping to win him over to the upperclassman's side. Ericus hesitates. He agrees that darkness does need to be defeated, but at what cost to the worlds was he willing to go? Xehanort is unimpressed with Vidar's conviction, as Xehanort is unimpressed with most things, and he challenges him by saying they've been defeating dark entities with their keyblades forever. Why is he taking this route to fight the darkness? Vidar states that in order to defeat true darkness, emphasis on true, and he's differentiating here, they need to gather 7 lights to replace the ones they've lost, and that Vor is helping them with this task. Hermod also isn't buying it, and he too challenges Vidar, stating that he doesn't know about true darkness, but that upsetting the balance of a world is one of the worst things that you could do. Vidar recognizes that Hermod is quoting Master Odin, and this triggers a flashback to when the upperclassmen were first sent on their trip to the outside world. Odin explicitly warns them not to interfere with the world's order. One of the upperclassmen asks if this includes when a world's order is determined by darkness, and Odin tells them even then it's not appropriate, for they don't have the experience yet to distinguish between light and all of the different forms of darkness. We return out of this flashback to the present, with Vidar stating that they were so focused on their teachings that they lost sight of what was important: their friends, the ones they lost fighting the darkness. Vidar once again appeals to Ericus. He sets the lamp down and urges him to take it, to side with him and join the upperclassmen in their fight, as he leaves with Vor. Ericus approaches the lamp and reaches for it, stating that his desire to defeat the darkness is strong, but he hesitates and says that what this path would cost them to defeat the darkness scares him even more than the darkness itself. He doubts himself, saying that he isn't sure if he's ready for this. Xehanort reassures his friend, saying that when he is a Keyblade master, he will face similar decisions, and maybe then he'll have more wisdom to decide what is right. Erd comforts her friend, and Hermod suggests they go talk to Master Odin in light of this revelation. They all agree and depart Agrabah, leaving Jafar's task unfinished. We jump back to the Keyblade graveyard 1 year after Xehanort was given the black coat and left the Masters sitting there waiting for him to return. And here we basically get the same scene we see in the end of the Remind DLC. The Master asks Xehanort what he saw on his trip, and Xehanort forms this kind of thesis on the relationship between those who have power and those who are weak, how the cycle is a sort of false light, a farce, and it only begets more darkness. The Master reveals his name and that he is a lost master, and vanishes, never to be seen by Xehanort again. And this is where episode 6 ends. We're on to episode 7, titled Reason for Disappearance. 65 years later, we see an elderly Xehanort walking along the corridors of darkness with a zombie-like Ventus. Xehanort's inner monologue is him narrating here, and he explains to us a bit about the nature of the dark corridors, which we've seen used so many times by the villains of the series. He explains how the dark corridors basically trivialize long distances, Connecting 2 points anywhere with a brisk walk. This seems like a wormhole idea. We know this because the properties of the darkness are weird. The properties of the realm of darkness are weird. This comes with a cost, however. As Xehanort says, the living aren't meant to traverse these corridors, but rather only spirits and emotions are meant to traverse these corridors. Their hearts gather here and interact with whoever is passing through, and any who attempt to embrace these emotions find that their hearts begin to corrode, ultimately falling to darkness. This is why the black coats are key. They protect from this corroding influence, allowing traversal of the dark corridors. But Xehanort ultimately believes that a strong heart can withstand the emotions and effects without protection. Ventus seems completely unbothered by all of this, probably because he has a heart of pure light. And then here we get an interesting piece of information. Xehanort mentions his first mentor and the blue-robed individual he lived with on Destiny Islands, and something that this individual taught him, and I'll direct quote it here. My first mentor taught me that the one inscribed in the book, the one chosen to be a dark vessel, can connect their heart to others and feel what they feel. So I must embrace these emotions, let them flow into my heart. He then asks if he finally will be deemed worthy as he spreads his arm and welcomes the darkness that has been continually assaulting them. This is interesting because Xehanort is clearly referencing something he was told by our reincarnated player character about an individual in the book, aka the Book of Prophecies, an individual that would be chosen to be a dark vessel, and how they can connect their heart to others and feel what they feel. So Xehanort appears to be acting under the belief that maybe he is this individual that the book references. We transition to a scene that we've seen play out before. This is the scene where Xehanort drops Ventus off at the land of departure to be trained by Ericus alongside Aqua and Terra. There's one interesting wrinkle to their conversation before Ventus collapses screaming after his first interaction with Terra and Aqua. Xehanort tells Ericus that he thinks this boy could be the one, in quotes, perhaps referencing some promised being in this book similar to the way he talked about one chosen to be a dark vessel. Whatever the case may be, there appears to be some reference or references in the Book of Prophecies to a special individual, a promised individual, or somebody that is extremely relevant in the events that are happening that the book spells out. We return to the present day in the classroom where Hermod, Erd, Xehanort, Ericus, and Bragi recount their encounter with Vidar and Agrabah and explain their findings to Master Odin. Vidar is looking for true light to defeat true darkness, and he is disrupting the natural order of the worlds by taking things important for their existence, hoping to find true light in the ensuing chaos. Hermod then asks Master Odin what true darkness is, and Odin explains how it differs from the Heartless they've faced already. Heartless are darkness given form. True darkness has no form, therefore it cannot be defeated by traditional means. We then transition back to the other part of the conversation that we saw Odin having with Vidar in the previous episode before that got cut off. He explains the nature of true darkness to Vidar, saying it's never been defeated and is without form, but the actions taken by the Lost Masters suggest there is a way by trapping a true darkness in a vessel and then destroying said vessel. This shocks Vidar, who immediately refuses to accept this course of action as a viable means of victory over the true darkness. Master Odin says this war can't be won without grief and loss, but again Vidar refuses to believe this is the only way. Master Odin says there may be one other way, but it is barred, and Vidar correctly guesses that it is Kingdom Hearts. Odin says this is correct, and that Kingdom Hearts may be summoned by gathering 7 pure lights from the darkness of chaos, which is different than the way Xehanort went about summoning it by forging the Keyblade. Odin continues saying that to call upon this power is to purge the worlds, which we know because Xehanort tells us this at the end of Kingdom Hearts 3. But he isn't sure whether this would destroy the darkness in this process. Odin once again reiterates that this is forbidden and suggests Vidar to focus on studying the nature of the darkness. The scene returns to the classroom where Odin says Kingdom Hearts out loud, explaining to the students that its power can purge the worlds and most likely defeat darkness. But Odin says they cannot be sure that what they face now is in fact true darkness, and even if it is, the question remains: is it worth it to summon Kingdom Hearts to purge the worlds, destroying the lives of many to attain victory, versus the lives of a few? Odin praises Hermod for coming to him, saying that this is beyond their capability or responsibility to deal with. He dismisses them, telling them their mission is over. As the students silently file out of the classroom, Odin folds his hand inside his robes and mutters to himself, "The Dark Seeker will finally be upon us." The students gather outside in the courtyard to discuss what to do next. They are torn between wanting to help resolve the situation and obeying Master Odin. Hermod makes an interesting observation, noting that Vidar said he didn't want the efforts of his friends to be in vain when they ran into him in Agrabah. He also said true darkness had to be defeated. The group of friends just can't get past that and feels like those two things have to be linked. As they try to figure out the solution to this problem, Baldur suddenly appears, and they are clearly all surprised to see him. He tells the group that he was tasked with studying the different types of darkness and quickly notices how distressed they all look. Baldur says that they need to find the upperclassmen and ask them what happened, but that's impossible. The group tells them that they need to find the upperclassmen and ask them what happened, but that's impossible. But here Baldur disagrees, saying that there is a world where they can go and talk to them, the underworld. Immediately after this, Baldur says they don't have to worry about finding his sister Hoder. She tried to protect Baldur, and now she's gone. Xehanort puts two and two together, the mention of the underworld and the fate of Baldur's sister, and kind of understands what is going on. Matching that with Vidar's statement about not letting his friends' efforts be in vain, we can logically conclude that some of the upperclassmen most likely probably met a tragic end. Baldur recounts his encounter with Ericus a week earlier, talking about the upperclassmen leaving on their trip before the exam. After their conversation, Baldur still felt like something bad was going to happen, so he followed Hoder. We get a flashback where Baldur sees Maleficent in her dragon form kill his sister Hoder. As she shields Baldur from the torrent of flames, Maleficent unleashes upon them, and Hoder vanishes before Baldur's very eyes. Baldur states that after that he passed out, and when he woke up, he was in the infirmary in Scala ad Caelum, which is weird because if Dragon Maleficent killed the Keyblade wielder who was resisting, then I assume she would have no problem killing one who was passed out unconscious. But I digress. He explains how Master Odin told them he had given Baldur a different mission, but really he was covering for Baldur and allowing him time to heal. So with all those revelations, Baldur tells them they should go to the underworld to speak with some of the fallen students, and he opens a gate. With little hesitation, the lower classmen enter, with Baldur entering last. So the underworld contains the shenanigans you would expect from a Hercules world, Hades being deceitful, the students participating in a tournament, there's a Cerberus fight. Baldur and Bragi actually hold off Cerberus so the others can go find the fallen upperclassmen, which eventually Erd and Hermod go to assist them. That leaves Xehanort and Ericus to continue their search for the fallen students themselves. Xehanort is anxious to find them, telling Ericus that there's something about all this that he's trying to figure out. He's feeling a little uncomfortable. There's pieces of the puzzle that aren't really lining up correctly. Eventually, they do locate Hoder and three other fallen upperclassmen as Hoder, Heimdall, Helgi, and Sigrun all appear before them. Hoder is surprised to be meeting Xehanort and Ericus under these circumstances, and Xehanort explains that they were tasked by Master Odin to locate them. Helgi comments that since they are considered missing, that means Vidar must not have made it back either, and Xehanort refutes this, saying they have run into Vidar and that he's working towards summoning Kingdom Hearts. This revelation shocks the four upperclassmen, as Xehanort tells them that Vidar didn't want their efforts to be in vain, so he wants to use Kingdom Hearts to purge the worlds of darkness that took his friends from him. In order to understand the nature of this darkness, they asked the upperclassmen if they could describe the nature of the darkness that did this thing to them. The upperclassmen recount their time in the Enchanted Dominion, the world of Sleeping Beauty. They spent some time discussing the fate of Princess Aurora, how a Maleficent had cursed her. They had a debate about whether or not it was proper for them to interfere in the world's order in order to do this. Ultimately, they decided to sleep on it and ask Master Odin's opinion the next day. However, in the middle of the night, Vali, who was on watch, leaps down from his lookout to inform Vidar that Hodor had vanished. They logically conclude that she went to confront the evil fairy on her own, and they decide to split up, with Helgi, Sigrun, and Heimdall running off to where they believe Hodor went. By the time that they arrive at Maleficent's castle, they are too late. They already see Hodor fading. The only words she manages to say is, "needs help." Heimdall tells them that they were unable to defeat Maleficent. When they woke up, they were in a world with a never-ending sky and ocean. They lost their bodies, and all they had left was their hearts, and we know this as the final world. This is in stark contrast to the story Balder told them about how his sister died. Remember, in Balder's version, he said that he followed his sister, and his sister went and fought Maleficent by herself, and she died, and that was the catalyst of that. So the upperclassmen begin to recount their time in the Enchanted Dominion, the world of Sleeping Beauty. They spent some time discussing the fate of Princess Aurora and how Maleficent had cursed her. They had a debate about whether or not it was proper for them to interfere in the world's order to do this. Ultimately, they decided to sleep on it and ask Master Odin's opinion the next day. However, in the middle of the night, Vali, who was on watch, leaps down from his lookout to inform Vidar that Hodor had vanished. They logically conclude that she went to confront the evil fairy on her own, and they decide to split up, with Helgi, Sigrun, and Heimdall running off to where they believe Hodor went. Ericus and Xehanort wonder if this evil fairy is the true darkness or even related to it. Helgi pretty quickly refutes this, though. He's saying that she turns into a giant dragon, and Helgi wouldn't exactly call that formless. The upperclassmen then offer up a philosophical inquiry, something that they realized when they were in the final world. In many worlds, there isn't a clear distinction between the light and darkness in people's hearts. It's about people's different beliefs. People want to believe that they are right and view anyone who is opposite to their beliefs as the darkness, making it sort of an eye of the beholder situation. In every world, there was strife born of conflicting beliefs, and Heimdall wonders that if, instead of creating a divide like light and darkness, maybe there was a way for everybody to coexist. Xehanort confirms this, saying that they've seen similar situations that would suggest the same, but he also argues that this is darkness's way. It slowly spreads and seeps into everything. Ericus also states that hearts don't have darkness until the shadows burrow itself inside. He reaffirms his commitment to destroying the shadows. Heimdall is silent for a moment, but tells them they have nothing more to share with them than the following. Their lives are their own. They need to go out and broaden their horizons in order to find their own answers. Heimdall tells them, may their heart be their guiding key, and the upperclassmen disappear. Xehanort and Ericus hurry back to their friends and find Erd waiting near the entrance. They ask where Bragi, Balder, and Hermod are, and she states Hermod went to look for Bragi and Balder when they never came back. Ericus says they could ask Hades where they are, and if on cue, Hades just kind of shows up. He tells them that of the two, he knows where one of them is as a new resident of the underworld. Hades tries to throw them out, but Erd is adamant that they aren't leaving until they get their friends back. Hades gets pissed off and just decides to keep them all there as permanent residents. A brief scuffle with Hades breaks out before Hermod, returning to the scene, repels one of Ericus's attacks from his Keyblade, asking what the hell they are doing interfering with the world's order by fighting Hades. Ericus tells Hermod that Hades took their friends, which is enough to convince Hermod to side with them. Hades, understandably pissed, prepares to smite all of them when a dark portal opens behind the four students, sucking them into the darkness and leaving Hades in stunned silence as our adventure in the underworld comes to a close. But before we leave, Hades senses something behind him, and as he turns, all he utters is the word, "you," before the camera begins to pan and the screen goes dark. Ericus and Xehanort come to in the dark corridors surrounded by darkness. Realizing where they are, Xehanort urges Ericus to put on his armor quickly to get temporary protection from the darkness. And he also tells Ericus not to listen to the voices all around them. Before they can formulate an escape plan, however, they decide to try and find Erd and Hermod. We transition to Hermod and Erd, who are also wearing their armor and traversing the dark corridors, waiting for help to arrive. The darkness's assault on them is relentless, and Hermod tells Erd it's too late, that the darkness is already in his heart. Erd urges him not to give up, and as she helps him to his feet, the darkness dissolves the helmets of their armor. Erd notices something approaching them from behind, and as Hermod struggles, she turns and takes a ready stance. Once again, the camera begins to pan, and once again, the scene fades before we can see who is approaching. Next time we see Erd and Hermod, they are lying unconscious on the ground. The darkness strips away their armor, and Hermod and Erd fade away until nothing but their hearts are left, floating away in the darkness. Back with Xehanort and Ericus, they try to go on but also collapse. Their armor begins to disintegrate, but in the distance, a bright ball of light appears and grows as it approaches them. It is Master Odin, and using the Master Defender Keyblade, he opens up a gate to Scala ad Caelum to save his only students who survived the corridors of darkness. We transition back to 65 years in the future as Xehanort walks out of the land of departure. As he slowly walks the halls, he comes across Vanitas, who is casually leaning against a pillar, waiting for him. Xehanort tells Vanitas he was supposed to wait at the Keyblade graveyard, and Vanitas gets snarky with Xehanort, who proceeds to threaten him, which is kind of funny and makes Vanitas visibly nervous. Xehanort then begins to recount the tale of the 13 ancient darknesses. He says that the Keyblade Masters of old gave themselves as vessels to trap the most powerful 7 darknesses, and as he says this, we have a graphic of the Foretellers, Lushu, and the Master of Masters taking the place of 7 darknesses. Of the remaining 6, 4 were imprisoned in the data world, and 2 were destroyed when the world collapsed. But 1 survived, and disguised itself as an ally of the light. Xehanort wonders if it hides in this time inside someone nearby. He then asks what Vanitas thinks as a being of darkness. Vanitas tries to play coy here, saying that he wouldn't know, but Xehanort counters. Though they were separate, the darkness once used to be whole, and were able to communicate despite being separate. Surely Vanitas would know where the others are. Vanitas tries to deflect again, saying he wouldn't know and that he is his own being that used to be part of a whole, Xehanort asks. Vanitas is silent, and his silence is telling. Xehanort asks Vanitas, hypothetically of course, if he was the darkness in question, why would it be necessary for him to hide? Why would he need to conceal his existence? Is it fear? Vanitas scoffs at this idea and asks what he could possibly be afraid of, and Xehanort replies, light. Vanitas replies that he is not afraid of Ventus. Xehanort then drops a truth bomb. He states that Ven's heart was not split into light and darkness, that Vanitas was not born from it. Vanitas inhabited his heart at a time, and if that is true, he asks where Vanitas and Ven came from. He states how Ven appeared in the dreams he would have when he was young, so it can't be a coincidence that they met. After hesitating, Vanitas asks Xehanort what he knows, and now Xehanort plays coy, asking, what is there to know? Vanitas tells him nothing and tells him also to forget the whole thing as they both begin walking silently down the hallway, once again, as episode 7 draws to a close. We now begin the 8th and final episode, titled The 7 Lights and 13 Darknesses. Episode 8 begins with a scene that is labeled 2 years from the present. An older Xehanort and Ericus have returned to their classroom, presumably after a journey of some kind, and they begin to set up a chess game as they reminisce. They reflect on their journeys, and Xehanort makes an interesting claim. He said his travels made him realize that one lifetime is just too short to explore all that he wants to explore and achieve all that he wants to achieve. When Ericus makes the point that you're supposed to enjoy life to the fullest since you only get one, and that you should leave someone to carry on your legacy, Xehanort counters by saying he would rather just do it himself. When Ericus asks him how many lifetimes he would need, Xehanort contemplates and says 14. 13 lives to carry out his goals, and 14 to explore the world that comes after. Very interesting. 13, Organization 13, 13 aspects of Xehanort. Very, very interesting. Ericus says that he must have some amazing plans in store to want 14 lives. When Xehanort asks what Ericus's dreams and goals are, he contemplates for a moment and says he wants to stay true to the light so that if one day any of his friends fall to darkness, he can be the beacon to light their way home. Xehanort grins, stating that it's the perfect goal for Ericus. The camera pans out and we get our episode 8 title shot. We return to the present and open on Xehanort and Ericus silently playing chess in the classroom while they wait for Master Odin to arrive. And when he does, they both take their seats, presumably the only remaining members of their class besides Vor, who remains with the upperclassmen. Master Odin says they have suffered unimaginable loss, but reassures Xehanort and Ericus that they are not to blame. Rather, Odin blames himself for being unable to deal with the upperclassmen and this new darkness. Ericus grits his teeth reciting the names of their lost comrades, Hermod and Erd, Bragi and Balder, the latter two who were presumably lost in the underworld because we did not see them again after the Cerberus fight. But Odin is surprised to hear Balder's name, asking the two if they crossed paths with him. When Ericus tells Odin he came to the underworld with them, Odin asks how that is possible, but before he can elaborate, there's a massive explosion that shakes the classroom. Offering no explanation, Master Odin says, "So it begins," as he raises his hands, and in a flash of light, summons the no-name gazing eye keyblade from its place on the wall to his hands. He tells Ericus and Xehanort to remain in the classroom while he evacuates the other students. Ericus protests, but Odin ignores him. Ericus turns to Xehanort and notices a look in his eye, asking if he knows something. Xehanort reluctantly says he wishes he didn't, and Ericus asks him if it's Balder, which Xehanort surmises it must be. Ericus puts it all together. The conflicting reports of Balder and Herod's encounter with Maleficent, Balder's conflicting story with what he said he was doing and what Master Odin said he was doing, Xehanort lays out his case. Balder lost his sister, someone he loved dearly. Anyone would be susceptible to the darkness in that state. Balder had fallen to darkness. The deaths of the upperclassmen and Hermod, Erd, and Bragi were most likely caused by him. Ericus, with a look of frustrated determination, turns to leave, stating that he is going to find Balder and purge the darkness in his heart. Unable to stop his friend, Xehanort gives chase. They arrive in the courtyard outside with the cacophony and explosions of battle taking place in the distance, although this area appears to be under control. Ericus expresses to Xehanort that he can't lose any more friends and begs Xehanort to help him rescue Balder. Hearing the pain and desperation in his friend's voice, Xehanort agrees, but before they can act, a gateway opens up and out steps Vidar, Vala, and Vali. Both sides seem surprised to see each other, and Xehanort briefs them on the situation, that Balder has fallen to darkness. Vidar says he didn't think Balder would turn on any of them, shocking Xehanort, who asks if Vidar knew the whole time. Vidar confirms this, saying that he knew darkness had chosen Balder as its vessel, and this enrages Ericus, who tells Vidar if he had just protected Hoder, none of this would have happened. Ericus raises his keyblade to confront Vidar, but Xehanort pleads with his friend to not give in to anger, lest he end up like Balder. Vidar summons his keyblade in kind, saying that if this is what Ericus needed to feel better, then so be it. Ericus tells Xehanort that he promised to help, and without saying a word, calls his own keyblade, as Vala and Vali summon theirs. After a brief battle where the two sides fight to a stalemate, Ericus still lunges towards Vidar for an attack, but is deflected by Xehanort, who tells his friend that this is enough, and they need to work together. Vidar confirms Ericus's belief in Balder, saying he too didn't believe Balder would fall to darkness. He couldn't bring himself to kill his friend's brother, so that is why he bet everything on Kingdom Hearts. But even if he could do it, Vidar realizes now that it's not the right thing to do. Xehanort and Ericus inquire as to the location of their friend Vor, and Vidar says she's headed towards the tower to make contact with Master Odin. Before they can take further action, however, a voice calls them from above, and much to all of their surprise, Balder materializes in midair, surrounded by an aura of pure darkness. He commends Xehanort for realizing that Balder had fallen so early, as he was afraid Xehanort would tell everyone. Ericus remains defiant, telling Balder that even though darkness has taken his heart, Ericus will bring him back. Balder refutes this, saying they are one now, and if they destroy the darkness, they will destroy Balder as well. Is this a true darkness? We're not really sure. Balder states he has business at the tower, and as he leaves, summons a small army of Heartless for the students to deal with before vanishing. They all realize that he's going after Vor, and in a show of their power, the 3 upperclassmen make short work of the Heartless that surrounded them before all 5 students rush towards the tower. Xehanort and Ericus reach the tower and search for Vor, but Balder finds her first. Vor is relieved to see her friend, but quickly realizes something is wrong as Balder tells her in a sinister voice that he isn't the Balder she remembers. And here we get a flashback to what Balder was doing while the lower classmen were out on their mission. He was in fact in a room recovering, but he was not in fact recovering. He was spiraling in his loneliness and depression. Day 1, she's gone. Day 2, they couldn't protect her, and now they're gone too. Day 3, why couldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Day 4, did they disappear? Were they erased? And as the days pass that Balder spends in this room in isolation, the room grows darker and darker, and Balder's shadow that he casts on the wall behind him becomes more defined. Day 5, I made my sister disappear. Day 6, I made her friends disappear. Day 7, a world without her may as well fall to darkness. At this proclamation, the shadow comes off the wall and begins to speak to Balder. If this is how he feels, he should purge this world and the 13 lights. The shadow merges with Balder, and he begins to emanate a dark aura. Back in the present, Vor says she heard about Balder's sister and asked if all of this was because he lost her. Darkness swirls around Balder, and he denies this. In fact, he claims he was the one who got rid of her, much to Vor's shock. Hodor, Helgi, Sigrun, and Heimdall, Bragi, Erd, and Hermod, he killed all of them. We then see flashback scenes. It wasn't Maleficent that killed the 4 upperclassmen in the Enchanted Dominion. It was Balder with a shockwave of darkness. He easily dispatches Bragi in the underworld, and he was there when Erd and Hermod succumbed to darkness in the dark corridors. Balder has been responsible for everyone's deaths. Summoning his Keyblade, Balder points it at Vor, declaring she will be 8. Vor defiantly declares that Balder won't get away with this as she summons her Keyblade. We return to Ericus and Xehanort, who are still frantically searching. They rush upstairs where they hear the sounds of combat. Vor has engaged Balder, but it's clear that she is very, very outmatched as Balder catches her Keyblade with his bare hand. He raises up in the air to finish her off with a devastating blow, but at the last moment she is rescued by Vidar, Vala, and Vali, who arrive on the scene in the nick of time. They all steel themselves to fight this overwhelming force of darkness, making a mockery of Balder's body, and Vidar, with one of the coldest lines in the series, tells Balder to go peacefully, may your heart be your guiding key. Xehanort and Ericus arrive on the scene shortly after to witness a massive battle as the upperclassmen alongside Vor seem to gain the upper hand on the darkness-possessed Balder. Saying that this wasn't the plan, he looks for options as the 4 wielders close in around him. Suddenly, Balder screams in pain as a massive force of darkness emerges from within him, turning into a fearsome Heartless. Caught off guard, the upperclassmen can only push Vor out of the way before the massive Heartless claims all of their lives in one single stroke of its blade, causing their Keyblades to vanish and their bodies to disappear. Xehanort and Ericus cry out to their friends as Balder continues to count. 8, 9, 10. The Heartless rush to engage Xehanort and Ericus, and Vor attempts to confront Balder, but she is quickly overwhelmed as a dark aura flares around Balder, and with one swipe of his Keyblade, he sends her careening across the floor, where she lands motionless, beginning to fade. Ericus and Xehanort rush to their friend's side as Balder gloats. 11, he proclaims. Ericus holds the fading Vor in his arms, and she apologizes, saying she is sorry for leaving them in Dwarf Woodlands. As she fades, Balder taunts them, saying lucky 12 and Lucky 13, referring to Ericus and Xehanort respectively. Saying he wants to finish this somewhere more befitting the occasion, he bids Xehanort and Ericus join him on the roof. As they reach the roof, Balder welcomes them and begins to explain his plan. The reason he had been counting was because of Kingdom Hearts. According to the darkness-possessed Balder, he claims that the way to summon Kingdom Hearts is to take 13 lights and offer them to the shadows. That would summon Kingdom Hearts. Xehanort is skeptical, saying that if he summoned Kingdom Hearts, it would purge the worlds and the darkness along with it. But this is where Balder laughs, and he proclaims that once all is purged, the world would be reborn in darkness. Ericus then realizes that Vidar's plan was misguided from the start, almost as if he was playing into the hands of the darkness, and this is where Balder reveals that he was basically behind everything. First, Balder needed to get rid of Hoder to spur Vidar into action and to seek revenge, but when Vidar would realize that Balder was the person he had to destroy to get his revenge, he would be unable to do it, for Balder was Hoder's brother. This would lead Vidar to turn to Kingdom Hearts. Balder made sure there was additional incentive for Vidar also by killing Heimdall, Sigrun, and Helgi. Xehanort asks if this was the plan all along, then why did Balder reveal himself to them? Balder explains that Vidar gave up on summoning Kingdom Hearts after realizing what it would cost, so that is when Balder enacted his backup plan, which required a more personal touch. Balder declares checkmate as darkness explodes from within him again, revealing the massive Heartless. Ericus and Xehanort raise their Keyblades to fight. They manage to defeat the Heartless and exhaust Balder as Xehanort falls to one knee trying to catch his breath. Balder is the first to recover and summons his Keyblade, rushing Xehanort for the killing blow. At the last moment, Ericus manages to dive in front of his friend and deflect the blow, sending both of them flying, both landing on their back. Balder remains motionless, and Ericus yells at Xehanort to drive the darkness out of Balder. Xehanort rises to his feet and slowly approaches, raising his Keyblade, not to drive out the darkness in Balder's heart, but to strike a killing blow. Ericus pleads with him to try and save Balder, and as Xehanort hesitates, the darkness explodes out of Balder once again, surrounding both of them in a veil of shadow. Inside this veil, Balder tells Xehanort to put his Keyblade away, and as they begin to talk, Xehanort lowers his weapon. Balder says Xehanort believes that he is a true darkness, but tells Xehanort that he is wrong. Hearts aren't just light or darkness, it isn't that simple. He then asks Xehanort what he thinks rules his heart, and Xehanort can't answer. Balder continues to press, asking if Xehanort is sure that he is like the other lights, untainted by darkness. He asks if Xehanort really thinks he is like his friends, and Xehanort can't answer. Balder then tells Xehanort that they are the same. They may stand by the light, but they beget darkness and cast shadows. Xehanort does this with Ericus, and Balder claims he did this with Hoder. When that light disappears, Balder says that is when they are swallowed by the void. Once again, Balder claims to not be the ancient darkness that Xehanort thinks he is, but claims that he is the unknown, that which Xehanort fears, and that fear gave him shape. He is the terror in their minds, the shadow that lives in the darkest corners of their hearts. Xehanort asks the darkness if it was born from Balder's heart, and Balder shakes his head. He says this darkness was born from all of them, as Balder, like Xehanort, was extremely sensitive to the hearts of others. Balder's animosity just spurted on, and the darkness born from all their light only grew and grew inside his heart. This is how they have grown over the years, true darkness included. Xehanort says that none of this matters as long as he defeats Balder, the darkness will vanish. As Xehanort points his Keyblade at Balder, his heart begins to glow, and the familiar voice of Balder's sister Hoder comes out, urging her brother to be strong. For a moment, Balder seems to reassert control as Hoder appears in front of him, seemingly from the connection with Xehanort's heart. She apologizes to her brother, and Balder admits to her that he was scared. Ever since he was a kid, he could sense what was in people's hearts, just like Xehanort. But when he was with Hoder, he felt nothing but light in her pure heart. This made him feel safe, but outside of her light, he felt darkness. And the more darkness he felt, the deeper he sank. It began to consume him, until he realized that the darkness was no longer coming from others, it was his own. He then said he met other people just like her with pure hearts of light as a scene with Ericus flashes on the screen. And this is when he realized that there are two types of people. People like her and Ericus, and people like him. This is why he chased after her light, so he wouldn't be left behind. This two kinds of people idea strikes a chord with Xehanort, but Hodor approaches her brother and tells him he doesn't have to be afraid anymore. They get close, and just when they seem to be at a point of reconciliation, Hodor's apparition and Balder both pull their keyblades on one another. The darkness reasserts its control as Balder goes to strike the final blow. There's a flash of light, and Balder discovers that he is wrapped in chains of light. The dark shroud fades, revealing the roof of the tower once again, and we see that Master Odin has arrived on the scene, and the chains of light have originated from his keyblade to contain Balder. Odin urges his student to purge the darkness from Balder, but he hesitates, and his eyes lock with those of Hodor, who attacks Balder. Deflecting the blow, Hodor vanishes as her heart floats into the sky, and Balder falls to his knees. He makes one last appeal to Xehanort, telling him that there's them and there is us. When they find the strength to pursue their goals, they get condemned by those with light in their hearts as being filled with darkness, that the friends they lost were just stepping stones on their path. Balder says he sees himself in Xehanort and tells him to seek out answers to the unjust way of the world. Xehanort slowly approaches, but instead of purging the darkness from Balder, he swings his keyblade to deliver a killing blow, causing both Balder and the darkness to fade from existence. Ericus is in shock, and all Odin can say is that destiny can be so cruel. 1 month passes, and we see Xehanort laying flowers on the gravestones of the lower and upper classmen that were lost. Hermod, Erd, Bragi, Vor, Vidar, Vala, Vali, Heimdall, Sigrun, Helgi, Hodor, and Balder. Ericus arrives with an armful of flowers, noticing that Xehanort has already laid flowers on all the headstones, but Xehanort says not to worry, there's no such thing as too many flowers. Xehanort asks how Master Odin is, and Ericus tells Xehanort he would know if he hadn't spent all his time since the incident locked in his room. Ericus basically tells him that Odin is a shell of himself, just a sad old man now, although he is trying to put things back together. Apparently he wants them both, Ericus and Xehanort, to take the Mark of Mastery exam so they can take his place and he can retire. He eventually wants to leave Scala Adkylum and retire to some cozy world. After they finish, Ericus challenges Xehanort to chess, and he agrees, telling Ericus under his breath to never give up on his dream, and the final episode draws to a close. But not before we get one final scene. As Ericus and Xehanort walk off screen, the camera lingers on the graveyard for a moment until a figure in a black robe walks into view from the opposite side. The man speaks, saying that he guesses it wasn't him after all. We get a flashback to Balder and Bragi fighting Cerberus in the underworld, the point where Balder allegedly kills Bragi. After Balder chases Cerberus off and tells Bragi about the nature of the darkness, Bragi utters an accusatory "you. It was always you." To which Balder responds that it'll be a shame that their friends will find out that Cerberus killed him. Balder turns to Bragi, and as he raises his keyblade, he asks Bragi if there's any last words he would like to pass along. Bragi says no, declaring that this is the end for both of them, also stating that if Balder goes back without him, that this will confirm Xehanort's suspicions, claiming that Xehanort is onto him. Balder says he doesn't need to go back, just to get Bragi out of the picture. He gets closer to Bragi, pointing his keyblade at his throat, but Bragi seems incredibly smug here and pretends to do the whole "oh no, you got me, whatever will I do" trick before summoning his keyblade and disarming Balder in a blinding flash faster than you could blink, all in one smooth motion. He then says, and I quote, "You think you're strong enough to beat me, as if," and we know that "as if" is Xigbar's catchphrase, and we know that Xigbar is Lushu, meaning that Bragi is actually one of Lushu's forms. But Bragi doesn't engage. Rather, he says that he'll just disappear and stay out of the way, As he begins to walk away, Baldur asks him who he is, and Bragi just laughs. Baldur summons his Keyblade and charges, and the screen goes to black. We return to the black-robed figure in the graveyard who says, "Tough luck, no chosen one yet, but Xehanort could be useful." The figure pulls back his hood to reveal the face of Bragi, the most recent incarnation of Lushu, sixth apprentice of the Master of Masters and Lost Master himself. Lushu laments that it will be hard to show his face if he's meant to be buried here, before walking off as the camera pans over Scala and Kylum. After the credits roll, we do have one more scene. We see a woman in a white robe give a baby wrapped in a cloth to a stranger in a blue hooded robe, who we know to be our reincarnated player character from Union Cross. We see Blue Robe with this child on the Destiny Islands. We get a time skip that indicates 9 years ago, as a young child Xehanort emerges from the seaside shack at evening, and the Blue Robe player sits by a fire that is burning on the shores of the island. Xehanort sees his guardian, our player, and runs over to give them a hug, sitting in their lap. He then asks his caretaker a question. "The child of Destiny?" The Blue Robe player nods and says yes. He tells Xehanort that his great-great-grandfather was a renowned Keyblade wielder. The child Xehanort says he's been told that 100 times and asks once again about the child of Destiny. Blue Robe tells him this child is a special child that will save the world from darkness. Child Xehanort doesn't get it, but Blue Robe continues, telling him he will meet many people and how those interactions will shape the person Xehanort is supposed to become, leading him on his desired path. Xehanort says they're the only people on the island, but Blue Robe says one day Xehanort will leave it. Xehanort is surprised and excited and asks if he'll be allowed to leave, even though the reason they are here on this island is to hide from the darkness. Blue Robe confirms this, telling him that one day he'll be strong enough to overcome the darkness. Xehanort pauses for a moment and then asks, since one day he'll leave this place, if he can see his mom, before then saying he knows some people he wants to meet. The kids from his dreams, the characters from Union Cross, who the player interacted with in his previous life before becoming Blue Robe. Blue Robe asks Xehanort to describe these kids to him, and Xehanort does so. A boy with silver curly hair, a boy with dark black clothes and a hat, a skinny boy with pink hair, and a quiet boy with blonde hair. A dark-haired woman that reminds Xehanort of his mom, and one other person, an individual that Xehanort says is kind of like you. Blue Robe's head sinks in a moment of silent contemplation as Xehanort asks what's wrong. Blue Robe grabs Xehanort and hugs him tight, telling him he can sense what is in others' hearts. Without a doubt, he is the child of Destiny. Xehanort is having these dreams because this is what is in Blue Robe / our players' hearts, the memories of their friends from a previous life, and this is affecting Xehanort. As Xehanort puts his head on Blue Robe's shoulder, he explains that they have seen many things in their 2 lifetimes, and begins to recount details from their first life. They mention the Book of Prophecies and how it was given to a dear friend, but says that much of what was inside was to remain a secret. In their second life, they learn that darkness was to prevail and light expire, but that there would be a child of Destiny that would change this outcome. They would have the ability to feel, share, and embrace what others felt in their hearts, and would even be able to connect their hearts with one another to become one. He would hail from the Isles of Destiny. Blue Robe notices that Xehanort has fallen asleep in their arms and comments to themselves, perhaps it is still too soon. We return to the very first scene in the game where we saw young Xehanort on the shores of the beach while the Blue Robe figure fell and passed away. Blue Robe begins an inner monologue. The end of my time has come. You will leave the Destiny Islands behind and embark on a journey in which you will encounter many people. Your childhood dreams are a precious memory I still hold dear. You saw what you felt within my heart, and through your journey you will connect with many others the same way you did with me. But not all hearts are good. Some may poison yours and move you to feel fear and hatred, hurt and sorrow, even the torment of loved ones lost. You will be tested by darkness time and again, but still you must press on. In time, your path will lead you unto light and fellowship, and I believe you will become light's master. I say this with conviction because coursing through your veins is the blood of Ephemer, a dear friend of mine. Blue Robe collapses and fades away as their heart floats towards the sky, and with this final scene, Kingdom Hearts Dark Road comes to a close, with the ending we've seen so many times now, an oath to return, Kingdom Hearts. So, now that we've wrapped up a pretty fascinating story of Xehanort's youth and the events of his life that kind of led him down the path that he eventually took, let's try to hit the main points and understand his character a little better. Immediately, as a baby, Xehanort is taken from his mother, who Xehanort mentions looks kind of like the black-haired girl in his dreams, who that is Skuld. No confirmation on the connection, though. So Xehanort is taken from his mother by our player character, who I've been calling Blue Robe, the reincarnation of our character from Union Cross. We can draw some interesting conclusions based on the post-credits scene titled Child of Destiny. Blue Robe takes Xehanort from his mother because he clearly believes pretty early on that Xehanort is this supposed child of destiny. Our player, during their second life, seems to have much more intimate knowledge of the contents of the Book of Prophecies and identifies Xehanort pretty early on as the child of destiny, a child in the book who will somehow prevent the final passage in the book from coming true, which we know is darkness will prevail and light expire. Blue Robe takes Xehanort to the Destiny Islands to protect him from the darkness finding him, and seemingly in an attempt to make one of the book's lines about the child come true, that this child would hail from the Isles of Destiny. Based on the final scene from very early on in Xehanort's youth, he is told by our character that he is the child of destiny, for the child will be able to connect with others' hearts, feeling what they feel, and sharing their emotions. Xehanort can clearly do this because he dreams of our player's former friends, Ephemer, Laurium, Skuld, Ventus, and Brain, because of his connection to Blue Robe as his guardian. This is irrefutable proof in our player's eyes that Xehanort is this promised child of destiny. After Blue Robe passes, we see future Ansem in his heart form only, in his brown-robed form, arrive in the past and basically kick Xehanort out of the nest, opening a portal for him to find his way to Scala ad Caelum and to begin his training as a Keyblade wielder. This is where he meets his most important relationship, Ericus, as well as his fellow classmates and friends, Hermod, Erd, Vor, Balder, and Braggy. Braggy, who is actually Lushu the whole time, but we'll get into that. These relationships are foundational to Xehanort's character. We get to see his and Ericus's relationship from its foundation, and this missing puzzle piece allows us to see the evolution of their relationship from childhood friends all the way to when Xehanort betrays and kills him in Birth by Sleep. Xehanort spends his time with these people, learning to be a Keyblade wielder, but the bulk of the story is focused on when these upperclassmen go missing. That is when he and his friends go out into the world and experience it for the first time outside of their insulated bubble of Scala and their textbooks. What they find doesn't quite add up with their teachings. They encounter worlds kept in order by people who have darkness in their hearts, such as the Queen of Hearts in Wonderland. They learn of the threat of true darkness, how negative emotions can cause darkness to form in hearts that are seemingly light, and they encounter a lot of things that challenge their worldview, and a lot of these lessons are not positive. What's more, with the reveal that Baldur was basically behind everything when he fell to darkness. This causes every single one of Xehanort's friends, besides Ericus, to meet a terrible fate. All his lower-classmen friends, with the exception of Ericus, and all of the upperclassmen die in this confrontation with Baldur. He kills every single one of them. Remember, Xehanort has one of those hearts that has the ability to connect with people he meets and carry their emotions, hurts, and how they feel with him. This must have been a devastating loss that negatively affected his state of mind, and we see this when Xehanort is about to go on his journey before the Mark of Mastery exam. We also learn of a different individual in the Book of Prophecies, someone known as the Dark Seeker. There are also many different mentions of this type of character in the Kingdom Hearts series, a Dark Keyblade wielder. Lushu references a chosen one who will be a dark vessel and reenact the Keyblade War. All of these many descriptions could be mentioning the same individual or different ones. There are many, many theories regarding this. During Xehanort's journey, for whatever reason, maybe to prove his heart was strong, Xehanort braves the dark corridors without his protection and is rescued by the Master of Masters, who refers to him as the Singularity. Now remember, in Kingdom Hearts 3, Remind, we see a very important cutscene between the Master and young Xehanort, and the context that the scene gives us is that the Master coaxed Xehanort to go on a journey and look at the state of the worlds and people's hearts after giving him one of these signature black coats. Here we see the catalyst of this conversation, where the Master, after rescuing Xehanort from the Dark Corridor, specifically asks Xehanort to continue his world tour, but keep an eye on people's hearts to see what really lurks within. This is after the Master frames a very specific view of the world about how there are strong and weak individuals, the nature of the emotions of the heart, a type of false light, feelings you think are good but are actually harmful and selfish. And Xehanort tries to counter back by saying it's not that simple to just lump people into two categories like this, but it's very clear now that the Master is a master manipulator. No one has any idea what his true intentions are or if he truly believes what he is saying. All we know is that the Master shows up in very specific instances for events that are very specific with some specific intention. Nomura uses the Master in very specific instances intentionally. He doesn't just throw him around willy-nilly. So sure enough, Xehanort goes off into the world and sees exactly what the Master describes to him. He sees a world order ruled by a false light, by people who have convinced themselves that what they are doing is right, but there is darkness within their hearts. He sees a world where there is a constant power struggle, where weak individuals empowered by darkness can rise up and take power from those who rightfully have it. He also sees an imbalance between light and dark, and oppression by the light by people who claim to be true lights, who describe anyone or anything outside of the norm or that challenges the norm as being possessed by darkness. Every aspect of the current world order is an utter failure. He comes back to the Master, concluding that he must act, believing that everything he has been told his entire life about him being the child of destiny has led him to this moment, a moment where he has to do something, a moment where he and he alone can save the world. And the Master reinforces this by playing into Xehanort's emotions. He calls Xehanort powerful, a person who could master the darkness to such a degree that he wouldn't need the black coat to protect him anymore. It should be noted that somewhere in between Xehanort's training and this time, he also time traveled to the future to take part in the events of Dream Drop Distance and Kingdom Hearts 3, etching his destined path on his heart that he would inevitably follow to become the antagonist we know him as. We see an old Xehanort play into these thoughts as well as he traverses the dark corridors with Ventus. He openly embraces the darkness, connecting with the negative emotions in that space, asking if he'll finally be worthy of the title Child of Destiny, worthy of being the savior he sees himself as. All these moments in Xehanort's life paved the way for the man he would eventually become and the things that he would eventually do. They are the mile markers along his dark road. That is why it is literally called Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. Just think of the things that he goes through that allow his view of the world to become so jaded and bleak. He is taken from his mother as a baby. He is told by his guardian, our player, in the blue robe, that he is the child of destiny that will save the world. He has a special heart that can connect with others in a way that allows him to carry their feelings, their hurts, and their greatest emotions and memories. He assembles a group of friends around him, all who end up dying terrible deaths, but not before their adventures in the outside world would reveal a reality that doesn't line up with their studies. A reality where darkness enforces order in some instances and is able to manifest in the hearts of those who cannot control their negative emotions. He sees a friend, Balder, fall to darkness, and then in that friend's final moments, has that friend prey on his insecurities by telling Xehanort that they are the same. They are the shadows cast by the light-carrying beings like Ericus. He encounters the Master in what an older Xehanort calls a fated encounter, but seems to be very much intentional from the Master's side. And the Master clearly manipulates him into seeing the world from his intended point of view, setting him down a path of darkness. Everything else that follows is a consequence of these influences on Xehanort. As he ages, he becomes obsessed with ancient knowledge, seeking it at any and all costs as he searches for a way to fix a world order that he sees as a failure. This obsession with knowledge also leads him to seek the power to enact his plans by any means necessary. He turns to the promise of power that darkness gives, using it to amass the strength and knowledge he needs to enact his plan, summon Kingdom Hearts, reset the world, and shape it as he sees fit. A fair and just world under his leadership, where everyone lives in the balance of light and darkness, and there are no petty squabbles for power. He forsakes everyone and everything, closing off his heart, which is ultra-sensitive to the hearts of those around him, leaving it open for only dark feelings and emotions. This leads him to do incomprehensible things in pursuit of his goal, killing his best friend Ericus by manipulating his pupils, taking Terra's body for himself, putting Ven into a years-long coma, trapping Aqua in the realm of darkness, horrible experiments as apprentice Ansem, possessing Riku, ripping Sora, Kairi, and Riku from their homes, forming the organization, antagonizing Axel, Roxas, and Xion, attempting to make Sora a vessel, time traveling throughout his entire existence in order to gather different versions of himself in order to form the true organization. And it is in this last act that reveals the greatest sin of Xehanort's endeavors. Kingdom Hearts is a series built at its core around the strength of connections between hearts, between friends, the warmth of companionship, the power to change the world when we work together and value our relationships with our friends and loved ones. All of Xehanort's actions and horrible things he does fly in the face of what Kingdom Hearts teaches us. His faith in the state of the world is so low, he trusts no one other than himself to fix it. For this reason, he time travels and gathers up different versions of himself because he would rather do this ridiculously complicated plan by himself rather than work with Ericus or Sora or anyone to try and fix the problems with the world. His solution is to purge the worlds as they are, to build something new in the new world that Kingdom Hearts would provide, with him as judge, jury, and executioner, the enforcing power to ensure the world does not fail again. It isn't until Xehanort is defeated at the hands of Sora that he realizes that he was wrong, and by him passing the Keyblade, the Master Keyblade, to Sora, that is him symbolically passing hope for the world's future to the next generation, content to go off to the afterlife with his friend Ericus. It is also the moment that he realizes that he wasn't any of the things he was told he was growing up. He was not the child of destiny, as he was told by our player. He was not the powerful being destined to save the world, as the Master told him he was. Xehanort's name is an anagram, rearranged without the X, and it spells no heart. But it also spells another word rearranged, another. At the end, he likely realized he was not this prophesied figure, but simply another piece in the bigger plan that he must have realized was in motion, considering how he met the Master, knew of the Book of Prophecies, and all these other things. Maybe he finally saw in Sora what he thought he was all those years, content to have been a bigger part in the larger narrative now in motion. An additional source of proof that Xehanort knows something larger is going on is his conversation with Vanitas, where he coyly lobs accusations at Vanitas that he is one of the true darknesses, about Ventus's appearance, etc. Xehanort's not stupid. He knows of the Lost Masters and at least has a suspicion of a larger machination at work here. So key points and speculations going forward in terms of Dark Road's effect on the rest of the series. The main thing I'm beginning to notice a lot is that the Book of Prophecies is starting to be mentioned more and more and play a somewhat bigger role. And there are characters in that book that are alluded to: the Child of Destiny, the Dark Seeker. But the Master has said before that the events of the book are not incredibly specific. They are more vague in general than they are specific. So whether or not the Child of Destiny or the Dark Seeker are specifically mentioned in the Book of Prophecies, whether they reference the same individual, because you could argue that due to his actions, Xehanort did save the light by ultimately being defeated by Sora, or whether they are some sort of mythos that came into being by the people of Scala trying to interpret the vagueness of the book, we just aren't sure. What we can be sure of is that regardless of Xehanort's status as one of these prophesized individuals, the Master appeared and directly interacted with him. He is the only character to have an interaction with the Master that we know of post-Union Cross. The Master refers to him as the Singularity, meaning that the Master saw Xehanort as a critical part of his overall plan, and he's obviously seen as an exceptional individual, an anomaly worth noting in the Book of Prophecies somehow. And it's interesting that the Master uses the word singularity, because remember, Sora creates a singularity when he goes back and changes the fate of all of his friends in Kingdom Hearts 3 and the Remind DLC. He creates a singularity, which is a taboo of nature, which rewrites fate. Perhaps singularities are events of critical importance. Perhaps Master Xehanort summoning and opening for a brief time the real Kingdom Hearts is a critical piece in the Master's plan. Lushu fucking shows up, by the way. I thought he would. It's revealed that Lushu was hiding during this time as Braggy, and this makes every single instance of the Gazing Eye Keyblade being present in the entire series. So anytime that Keyblade shows up, anywhere that it is, Lushu has been uncomfortably close by. He hid as Xehanort's classmate to keep an eye on the Gazing Eye Keyblade. He confronted a darkness-possessed Baldur who was caught off guard at Lushu's strength and all the cryptic things he was saying. At the end, when he appears in the graveyard lamenting the loss of his current disguise, he also mentions that he isn't the chosen one, potentially referencing Xehanort. But in Lushu's later writings in Kingdom Hearts 3, he identifies the chosen one as one who would recreate the Keyblade War, kind of unifying the idea that the Child of Destiny and the Dark Seeker are the same person. Also a note on Baldur, I haven't been able to find any concrete evidence that he was one of the one true darknesses or just a darkness that is a product of the pain in his heart after losing his sister. We can't be sure. And this also leaves us unsure as to the actual number of true darknesses left. We get to reveal that Xehanort is a descendant of Ephemer, and since Ericus comes to wield the Defender Keyblade, we can surmise that Ericus is probably a descendant of Brain. So again, our main question that we keep coming back to, as we have been for most of the events post Kingdom Hearts 3, is how does this play into the Master's overall plan? Xehanort appears to be critical, so critical that the Master appears to him to help set him on his destined path. We aren't sure, and we can't spend hours speculating about the Master's true intentions. I'm getting wary of the whole Book of Prophecies narrative device. We're starting to get more standard tropes like this, from the Child of Destiny to the Dark Seeker, prophesize individuals that are meant to fill a specific role. I'm not opposed to a prophesied savior story element in a video game. Sometimes playing the Chosen One is cool. Sometimes you can have a unique twist on it, like in Star Wars, where Anakin is supposed to be the Chosen One, but falls to darkness and ends up in this twisted sort of way, still bringing balance to the Force. Blue Robe describes the Child of Destiny as a person whose heart is super sensitive to the emotions and feelings of hearts it is connected to. Xehanort is claimed to have this, but another character in the series fits this description too. Sora. The strength of his connections is his defining characteristic. Time and again, it has been his strength. This idea makes me a little bit nervous about Sora potentially being a prophesized being in some book. Nomura describes Sora as an ordinary person, a character that any boy or girl could identify with, not someone who is destined to be this hero. If we go back on this idea and Sora is some kind of savior, some kind of promised being, that would be much more disappointing. I'm also worried about this Book of Prophecies becoming too much of a narrative crutch. Prophecies, time travel, and things like that, it can be a lazy way of just making things happen just because. And I don't want this to be the case, because the more we get revealed in the Kingdom Hearts series, the more we can go back and examine previous games to see that things are very intentional. I like to believe that this won't be the case, as Nomura is usually very good at playing with tropes like this and using them to subvert our expectations. We've seen the Book of Prophecies used as this tool to trick the darkness, to sow discord among the foretellers, so it seems to be a device by which the Master can ensure people act in a certain way in reaction to it, and thus control the outcome of events. It could also be used as a waypoint for time travel. Think about it. The Master removes his eye and forms a temporal link with it, putting it in his Keyblade. Anything his eye sees, he can see, and the Book of Prophecies comes into existence. The two are linked across time. The book can't exist without the Keyblade can't exist without the book. Anyways, I'm starting to speculate a little bit now. I'm wary about the book for the same reasons I was wary about time travel in Dream Drop Distance. By introducing time travel and allowing characters to be in any time, at any time, you risk undoing a lot of the really great and consequential storytelling that took place before, because suddenly there are no consequences. I feel the same about a Book of Prophecies narrative device. You can use that to say anything because it allegedly contains all the events to happen in the series so far. But I have faith in Nomura, and I believe that he will continue to use this narrative hook in interesting and unexpected ways. Nomura clearly wanted to tell this story. Even though games like Recoded and Chain of Memories might not seem like critical entries, every Kingdom Hearts game has had some narrative purpose for existing. Nomura clearly wanted to explore the character of Xehanort more in relation to the new arc of storytelling we're going into, which is the Lost Masters arc. And although Xehanort may be defeated, I have this feeling that his impact on the overall story isn't quite finished yet. With that being said, we're going to wrap it up here. We have one game left, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. That is the final game remaining for Guiding Keys. And once we play and talk about that game, we will be done with the entire series for the foreseeable future until we get Kingdom Hearts Missing Link or Kingdom Hearts 4. Thank you guys so much, as always, for the support on this mini-series. The reactions I've gotten to all these episodes are always so positive, and sometimes it's a little overwhelming. It means so much to me that something I'm so passionate about is received as well as it is, and that makes me incredibly happy. It makes me so happy I can't even describe it to you. But we have one game left, and we're finishing up Guiding Keys. If you'd like to keep up with the show, The best way to do that is go to linktr.ee/Unlockables podcast. All of the show social media links are there. All the show podcatchers are there. The link to the Discord server is there. Jump on our Discord server. Check out an awesome community of people we have that are also content creators. Not all of them, but some of them are also content creators. And we talk about games and all kinds of fun stuff in there. If you like supporting the show further, you can go check out the Unlockables Patreon at patreon.com/Unlockables. I have 2 tiers of support. I have a $1 tier that's just hey, I want to support the show a little more than just listening to the episodes. Doesn't come with any other bonuses, but it's just like hey, I want to support the show with a $1 tier. So I decided to make that tier available. No strings attached if you wanted to show a little bit extra love, which is not completely unnecessary at all, though. And there's a $3 tier, which is the rare unlock tier where you get to unlock some extra goodies. I have mini episodes and vlogs that are coming out, and you can have voting rights on picking games for me to play in the Discord for the show. So again, no need to sign up for the Patreon if you just like the main feed stuff. All the main feed stuff will remain in the main feed. All the stuff I do, like Guiding Keys, Kingdom Hearts, all those big projects like that, will remain in the free feed. I'm not going to lock any of that stuff behind a paywall. But for myself, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Remember, it's not just the story of video games, it's the story of you. And may your heart be your guiding key.